Hi, my name is Selavo. I'm a professor at the University of Latvia, and I'm also a co-director of the BITL program at the Riga Business School. And I also teach a class or two there. So I've been asked a few questions that I'd like to answer today. And the first one was, how many programming languages do I know? Well, let me ask you a question. How many kinds of bread have you had in your life? You could have had rye bread, wheat bread, white bread, naan, roti, pumpernickel, full-corn broth. Bread to us is just as essential as programming languages are for computer science, and I have picked up quite a few along the way. So to name a few would be C, C++, assembly, Scala, Python, Prolog, Pascal, PL1, Perl. Look, there are 5 on P alone, and there are more. And besides, there are some other languages that are related to computer science, such as Verilog and VHDL. Those are hardware description languages that describe digital devices such as processors that are actually running those programs. And then there are languages that are mistakenly sometimes called programming languages, such as HTML, XML, YAML. Those are the languages that describe the structure and content of the information rather than the programs that are being executed. Those are markup languages. So let me rephrase the question a little bit. How many kinds of languages do I know that are related to computer science? And my answer would be 3. Those are programming languages, hardware description languages, and markup languages. All right, so the next question was, what was the first language that I learned? Well, guess what? The name is PL1, that stands for Programming Language 1. So I remember I picked up a book in a bookstore, and there were only 1,000 books published like that. So I read the book, I learned the language. I actually got to use it on a mainframe. That's a huge computer that barely fits in a room. But that was a few decades ago. And then soon enough came BASIC, and I could write all kinds of programs and even games in it. So interesting fact about BASIC was that the programs used to be stored on an audio tape cassette, the same kind that music and songs were stored and played from at the time. So the next question is, what was the hardest programming language for me to learn? And Pascal is not coming to mind, but Prolog is. And the Prolog is a wonderful language that lets you to define rules that will be tested when you ask a question. For example, you may define that, hey, we're gonna have a chessboard, 8 by 8 squares, and we're gonna have queens, and this is how queens can move, and this is how queens can hit another queen or another token from the game. And then you ask a question, how do you put, or rather, can you put 8 queens on a chessboard so that they don't hit each other? Okay. But the hard problem for me was, I was studying at the time still at the university, was how do you concatenate 2 strings using Prolog? I mean, how do you write rules and not use any variables to get, 2 strings attached to each other? In other programming languages, it's very simple, right? You just say string 1 plus string 2, that's the concatenated string. But in Prolog, you would have to go something like, okay, so let's say that this is the string that is the result of these two strings concatenated, and is that true or not? And how do you make rules about those other strings? So that made me change my thinking quite a bit. I had to look from completely different perspective, and that was a challenge, a good one though. All right, so the next question is, what would I wish to the new students? And I'd say ask why. About, whenever you study a hard, challenging problem, ask why. What are the practical applications in real world of this problem? So for example, say you study calculus and you would have to study Fourier transforms. And it's lots of formulas and a bit dry perhaps in the beginning. But if you learn that Fourier transforms can be used to find out what frequencies are used in sound, in songs, in speech, and that this result can be used to actually compress this sound hundreds of times and make up smaller files, such as MP3 files for music storage, that would give you a much better context and motivation to actually learn about this. All right, so the next question is, if I was a student now, what would I do? Internship comes to my mind. So when summer comes, you don't have to go to school, perhaps. So you could play all day, or you could find a good internship. And the benefit of that is that you get to work with professionals, you get to learn from professionals on real life projects. And perhaps even the most important is that you get to build your network of people in the field that will pay off in the most unexpected ways in the future, near or far. That I can promise. Okay, so finally, fun fact. So perhaps you have seen in some companies, when they look for programmers, they say, we're looking for a rock star programmer. Okay. But did you know that actually there is a programming language that's called Rockstar? So look it up. Maybe it will be useful one day. See you.